I call the Kenai City Council regular meeting of September 18th, 2019 to order. If you would like to rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, can we have roll call?
Mayor Gabriel is absent. Councilmember Malloy.
Here.
Here.
Vice Mayor Navarre.
Here.
Councilmember Nackstedt.
Here.
Councilmember Petty.
Here.
Councilmember Glendenning.
Here.
Councilmember Peterkin is absent. Vice Mayor Navarre, you have a quorum.
Thank you. I now need a motion to approve the agenda, and I would bring the council's attention to revisions on the agenda of adding to item G4, approving election workers, a substitute memo requested by the clerk. Add to item G9, assignment of shore fishery lease, a supplemental memo from the city manager. Add to item G10, assignment of tidelands lease, a supplemental memo from the city manager. And add to item J1, city manager's report, fire department's mid-month report, and that was requested by the city manager. I also, under scheduled public comment, would like to add Brett Heber from the Kenai Peninsula Borough Assembly for a report. Councilmember Malloy.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Navarre. I move to approve the agenda with the requested revisions to the agenda and packet listed by Vice Mayor Navarre, and also to add Brent Hibbert with a Kenai Peninsula Borough Assembly report under scheduled public comment item B, and requesting unanimous consent.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing and hearing none. All those in favor? Unanimous consent was requested. No objection. The agenda is approved as amended. I'm now down to consent agenda. Councilmember Nackstedt.
I move for approval of the consent agenda, request unanimous consent.
Second.
Consent agenda has been moved and seconded and unanimous consent. Any discussion? Councilmember Glendenning.
Yeah, there was an individual approached me before the meeting that may wish to speak to an issue on the consent agenda. That'll be allowed at the proper time.
Yes, I'm going to do that right now.
Thank you.
At this time, the consent agenda as approved is before us. Is there anybody that wishes to speak to any item on the consent agenda? Please come forward, state your name and address for the record, and you have the floor for 3 minutes.
Ron Isaac, 620 Cedar Drive, Kenai. Yes, I want to speak on the hours of the marijuana establishments. I know some things were brought in here about the different surrounding areas. Now, Seward was brought up, but what wasn't brought up was they closed their bars at the same time. They have the same exact hours. There's no difference. And Homer wasn't brought up. Homer also has a 5 a.m. on their retail shops, and the bars are 5 a.m. And so, it wasn't exactly everything brought into that. And of course, I must state I'm very much against this. We've hashed this out and hashed it out over time, and now this is sneaking back in. There's no sense to waste the time. We've never had a call by the police to any of our shops. I don't know how many calls each weekend the bars get. And the police have to make regular rounds. And so I just, I don't see where this is it's kind of a waste of time again. And if it does go through, then there's still gonna be an argument. It's not gonna end here, you know. Our business is not gonna roll over and let the bars go on till 5. And we're not, they called my wife and asked her about this, and she said, oh, no, we probably won't stay open that late. But then she turned around and thought, well, yes, we will, when the dip netting goes 24 hours a day and the fish are running, you know, because we've had people come by and say, hey, we stopped by, but you guys are closed during the fishing season. Bars, I know they say safety and everything from people driving in here, but I think it's a little more dangerous to people driving back from the bars. So anyway, I guess that's the extent of what I have right now.
Thank you. Are willing to stand for any, or stay for any questions?
Yes, I will.
Any questions? Councilmember Glendenning.
I think the approach for selecting these hours were based on the surrounding area, which is Borough. And they close at 2. Previous testifiers before the Planning and Zoning Commission suggested, and some may be even present in the room, that 2 o'clock would be okay to comport with the surrounding areas that have hours. That way no one would be put to an advantage or a disadvantage. So that's the approach that I heard.
Okay, well, that is an approach, but I think that advantage or disadvantage, the city of Soldotna, from what I understand, and even the borough, that this isn't going away either. That's gonna be coming back. From what I understand, a few retailers. It's gonna be coming back, and so all of a sudden, if that comes back and we're put at 2 o'clock, then we're at the disadvantage. So, I don't think we can go by what surrounding towns are doing. You know, we're Kenai. If Johnny jumps off the bridge, I don't wanna jump off after him, you know, that type of a thing. So, no, I think we should, be our own city.
Thank you. Anybody else on council have a question for Mr. Isaacs? I'll keep in mind, this ordinance is up for introduction tonight, unless it was polled and killed for introduction. So it will be on our next agenda for action, I believe. So just keep that in mind. It's only up for introduction. It's not up for action by the, other than that, by the council tonight, okay?
Yes, I just wanted to make a few corrections, on Seward, which they have the same, bars and retail, and Homer also has the same, bars and, cannabis shops, so, you know, it's, I just wanted to correct things.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And that's valuable testimony. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak to the council on consent agenda items only? Please state your name and address for the record, and you have the floor for 3 minutes.
Okay, hello, thank you. My name's Ryan Tunseth. I thought at first I heard Ron say, closing the bars down at 5 a.m., not close the bars at 5 a.m. I thought, man, you're gonna have a lot more people in here if you start trying to do that. That's a tough group of people anyway, tough joke too. Listen, I think I should just start by giving a quick update about the Marijuana Control Board. Their last meeting was in Nome. Really nothing extremely substantial came out of that. There's a few things that were certainly on the table from the director's standpoint that she's requested the legislature, primarily related to tax. That's a major issue right now. Transportation, and then some issues with like allowing minors in the workplace, breastfeeding mothers, those type of things, in areas where they may have no other options. So they're looking at a few things to consider there. Other than that, no real updates. Another thing that's worth updating, you've probably heard, is there's been a few cases of reported actual death from vaping in the lower 48 and other areas. Primarily, it looks like, it's an ongoing investigation, but it looks like coming from black market sources that seem to contain in common a carrier ingredient called vitamin E acetate, which is really like a thinner. It's used to spread it out. I'm very happy to report that no vaping products that have been approved by the state of Alaska have any carrier in them like vitamin E acetate. They haven't approved that. And none that I carry, none of our local manufacturers, nobody in the state that's making vape cartridges has this in them. And so I wanted to give a quick update on that. Now, lastly, I just want to sort of hit on the issue at hand. I will never be open at 2 a.m. I personally don't see the need to, and I have really no desire to. What I do feel like, though, and maybe this is similar to the vaping issue, or it's similar to the edibles issue when there was a few people getting sick from edibles and things like this. Like, I trust this council very much, and I trust the management very much to create a city that's a great place to live. And I trust that in making decisions, you look for opportunities to grow the businesses that are here, because there doesn't, at least in my opinion, seem to exist these vacuums out there where we can just grab up economy. Potentially in the black market marijuana world, there's some, but nowhere else, at least I can tell. And so if we're gonna make decisions that say we're not going to allow edibles because we don't need it, or we're going to restrict these license hours because we don't need it, if the licensees are saying, hey, there's economy to it for me, there is a reason, I think I can make money, that it should be considered, and it shouldn't be something we should take off the table.
Continue.
Sorry, request to finish. If we don't have to. In the edible situation, nobody was applying for that. In this situation, I don't believe anybody's trying to stay open that late. On the other hand, when I think about communities that have diverse economies, and great places that I want to live, I don't think that I see those communities having marijuana stores open until 2 a.m. or 5 a.m. So I trust this council, and I trust the administration to make the right decisions. This one, to me, again, it's not something that I'm going to bat for because I don't plan to be open. But I do want you to think about, through the lens of the business owner, what we can do to support business. And as always, I'm here to answer questions about the industry and my business as well, if you have any. Thank you for letting me.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there any questions from the council? Councilman Naxted.
Yeah, Ryan, thanks for coming tonight. I have one question, and I guess it's really not for you, but I'm just going to question anyway, and maybe it can be through you, but it would be of interest if there is a kind of my some kind of a graph. I mean, when do the businesses, when does it peak? When does it? What happens between the hours of 2 and 5? Maybe between midnight and 2, 10 and 2. You know, what are those fluctuations? And maybe they're wild, but perhaps you and the other businesses have some idea. It's a business, so I think some folks are probably pretty tuned in on that. So, just what kind of business are we talking about between those hours?
Yeah, that's a great question.
In the middle of the night.
Maybe to answer the question about the restriction hours, I've never been open that late. I've never even been open past 11 o'clock at night. And so I don't know. I don't have any data on that. What I do know is that from 10 to 11, that time frame, it drops off. By 11 o'clock, I might have a customer every 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. It starts to get fairly slow at that point. Now, individual businesses, I think it does fluctuate. I did notice in the summertime, depending on when Cannery would let people off or different things going on, you certainly see these different, peaks and valleys of time. But, I base whether or not I'm going to stay open based on whether or not I've got the sales to support it. And that's why I personally won't be open for those hours. Now, if there was a need or a compromise in there where you allowed longer hours in July or something like that, that's probably where you're going to see it, when the largest amount of people are here and the sun's still up, and it might be, something to consider. But I don't have any data related to anything really after midnight.
Yeah, and And I kind of knew you wouldn't, but I know there's other ears in the room, and I'm asking, if we had some data like that, it would be something that we'd have to consider, otherwise we don't have it. You know what I mean?
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Tunseth, for your testimony. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak to the council on consent agenda items only? There'll be an opportunity in just a minute for other items that are not on the agenda. If they are, they'll come up at its appropriate time. So I don't want to mess you up, but thank you. Seeing none, I have the motion for approval of the consent agenda with unanimous consent. Is there any objection or any, seeing none? The consent agenda is approved. We're now down to scheduled public comment. Assemblymember Brett Havier, please come forward, and you have the floor for up to 10 minutes if you need it. Thank you.
That's way too much. So, hope you had a great summer. I did. I know I haven't been over here for a while, so I wanted to get over here and just kind of give you a little update. Last night we had a meeting in Homer. It's always nice to go to Homer. It's a beautiful place. We took a tour of the hospital down there. Nice hospital. First time I'd ever been in there. Went around and looked at they do have a few issues. One of them is parking for both employees and patients. They're wanting to put a new CT scan in there. They took us and showed us where they were going to put it, and so hopefully they can get that done. We had Pebble Mine give us an update on the Pebble Mine thing, and that brought out a lot of people from Homer to testify last night, so it was a late night. We also, on the agenda last night, we approved the precinct board, the canvassing board, and the absentee voting officials for the October 1st election. And Johnny spoke that they're having troubles finding election workers for that. So in Kenai, District 1 and 2. So if you know someone, maybe, unless they've already filled that, I'm not sure. Have they? Have they filled it? Great. So that was last night. I'm glad to see resolution 2019 and -65 coming in front of you tonight. So it'll be interesting to hear on this. And yeah, I'm looking for questions.
Thank you. Is there any questions? Councilmember Glenn Denning.
Might have questions on 219-65, but from your presentation here, you're home free.
Okay. All righty. Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. We're now down to that part of the agenda, unscheduled public comment. This is 3 minutes per speaker. Is there anybody that would like to speak to the council at this time? Please come forward, state your name and address for the record, and you have the floor for 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Lisa Coates, 410 Magic Avenue in Kenai. I am a co-owner of Urban Extracts Manufacturing, marijuana manufacturer. I wanted to first start by just thanking you for letting us be a part of Industry Appreciation Day. And I would field any questions you have about it. I thought it was very well received. I thought we behaved very well, but I'm here to say thank you. We appreciate that opportunity to interact with the public. That being said, too, I'm here to say our primary product is vape cartridges, and it is in the news, and so I would field any questions, but I want you to know our process and what we produce has none of the flavorings, chemicals, additives, cutting agents that is being brought to public's attention. We're a clean, and I would invite you at any time, come on out and tour our facility. But basically when we intake cannabis to process, the only thing that touches it after we take it in is carbon dioxide, food-grade ethanol and activated charcoal. That's it. We may add, we do add cannabis terps that we are part of the plant that we brought in, and if it doesn't have a lot of terpenes, we may add some natural food-grade terps, but that's it. So that being said, I would, any questions you have, please feel free to ask. And I don't know if this was the right place to give the comment on the 2 a.m. You know, we don't really have any skin in the game as far as staying open at 2 a.m. I can say as a manufacturer and interacting with the public, I get inquiries all 24/7. They're not, and I would ask that you not judge who the people are that are purchasing these products. Most of the people that reach out to me are for taking it for pain or sleep. So if someone's up at 2 a.m. and they maybe are working a night shift and they get off at 3 o'clock in the morning and they want to sleep, you know, they have an option to go to. So just ask that you not judge the people who are purchasing in the middle of the night. And it's an opportunity for income, and if the store owner believes they can make a piece of change off of that, so be it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And before I go to council members' comments, I just want to correct one thing, and I appreciate the fact that you thank the council for Industry Day, but the city of Kenai doesn't put on Industry Day. It's a private group of citizens that have done that for the last 28 years. The city of Kenai does participate by helping out with the facilitation of using their park and some of their personnel. And they have a small donation that they make every year as part of to put it on, because
I was just made aware of some concerns from the council, so I just wanted to.
The council has never brought it up, and they probably won't, because it's not it's not an entity within the city of Kenai. And certainly with the committee, they can raise it, but I just wanted that cleared up, that if you've heard it, it's misinformation, and that's why I'm sort of wanting to correct it now. The city of Kenai is excited about having it in the city of Kenai, and it's a great event overall but it's a borough-wide kind of event, and thank you. It's just held in the city of Kenai, and the city participates and thanks, the committee for having that opportunity, and they're happy to participate. At some point in the future, if they don't want to make the donation or participate, I'm sure the group will find someplace else to hold it, but at this point, I haven't heard any complaints along that front. Thank you, though. And don't forget to come back next meeting when that ordinance, if you want to continually speak to it.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council or of Ms. Lisa Coates? Seeing none, thank you very much. Is there anybody else in the audience that wishes to speak to the council on any item not on the agenda? Seeing none, we're now down to item D1 under public hearings. This is ordinance number 3084-2019, increasing estimated revenues and appropriations in the general fund for reimbursement received for support of the Swan Lake fire suppression efforts, introduced by the administration. Councilmember Malloy.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Navarre. Move to enact ordinance number 3084-2019.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there anybody in the public that wishes to comment to the council on this item? Seeing none, it's back before the body. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Malloy.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Navarre. Yeah, I just want to thank, our Kenai Fire Department and the state of Alaska Forestry and all the others that have been involved in the efforts to suppress this Swan Lake fire. Also, I did have a question. I think just for the record, I think I understand it. What we're doing here is we're appropriating some money, and the other money that we're getting for reimbursement, we're holding back. We're not spending it, not being appropriated. And I just would like to ask administration to, explain that, what happens with the money that's not appropriated.
City Manager Ostrander.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Navarre, Councilmember Malloy. Yeah, so the remaining $28,675 that was reimbursement for the equipment that we utilized on the fire is just going directly into the general fund. It's not being appropriated for any use at this time.
Thank you.
Councilmember Glendenning, did you still have a question?
No, that took care of my concerns.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, we're ready to vote.
Councilmember Malloy,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Navarre,
Yes.
Councilmember Naxtet,
Yes.
Councilmember Petty,
Yes.
Councilmember Glendenning.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Ordinance number 3084-2019 is enacted. We're now down to resolution number 2019-64, approving an agency fund agreement with Kenai Senior Connection, Inc., introduced by the administration. Councilmember Naxted.
I move to adopt Resolution 2019-64.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. At this time, is there anybody in the public that wishes to comment to this resolution? Seeing none, it's back before the body. Any comments or questions? Council Member Glendenning, or Glenyce Petty, sorry.
Yes, I would like to ask the city manager about the segregation of these funds, if they will be segregated specifically so that these are segregated from the city funds.
City Manager Ostrander.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Navarre, Councilmember Petty. So they are segregated. As you know, the funds, when they're invested, if Senior Connection chooses to invest with the city, they will be in one pool. So it's one pool that contains City of Kenai funds, plus also the Kenai Community Foundation funds, and then this would add the Senior Connection funds to it. So it's all one pool. It's segregated out internally with our finance department. They track where each of the funds are. Obviously, because they're in one pool, they all go up the same amount as far as any investment earnings of those funds. But we do segregate them out and track them within the finance department.
Councilmember Petty.
A follow-up question to that, are these subject to, let's see, will these funds remain private, or are they subject to the Freedom of Information Act?
City Manager Ostrander.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Navarre. Councilmember Petty. I would say that they probably will be subject to it. They are going to be reported in our CAFR every year, so you'll actually be able to see in public documentation that the city generates exactly what those amounts are. So it is going to be information that will be available to the public if they wish to seek it out.
Any other discussion or comment on this resolution?
Request unanimous consent.
Unanimous consent has been requested. Is there any objection?
I would like a roll call, please.
I'm sorry?
I said I would like a roll call, please.
No problem. Madam Clerk, we're ready to vote.
Vice Mayor Navarre,
Yes.
Councilmember Naxtet,
Yes.
Councilmember Petty,
Yes.
Councilmember Glendenning,
Yes.
Councilmember Malloy.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Resolution number 2019-64 is adopted. We're now down to resolution number 2019-65, adopting a joint resolution number 2019-001 of the Assembly of the Kenai Peninsula Borough and Councils of the City of Homer, Kachemak, Kenai, Seldovia, Seward, and Soldotna, recognizing the recommendations of the Kenai Peninsula Boroughs Election Stakeholders Group and directing staff to explore implementation of the recommendations. This was introduced by Councilmember Peterkin. Councilmember Malloy.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Navarre. I move to adopt resolution number 201965.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there anybody in the public at this time that wishes to comment or testify to this resolution? Seeing none, it's back before the body. Councilmember Nackstead.
Yes, thank you. This is sponsored by Councilmember Peterkin, but I thought perhaps the clerk might, since he is not here, might be able to give us a good rundown, considering also I think she is on that committee.
City Clerk Jamie Heim.
Sure, thank you, Councilmember Naxtat. So the election stakeholder group was tasked earlier this year by the Borough Assembly with researching ways to increase voter participation by developing sustainable election processes that maximize accessibility and inclusivity. The election stakeholder group developed 8 guiding principles to accomplish their goal, and through the course of several months, they reviewed precinct-based and by-mail options. They were given presentations on different types of election equipment. They toured Anchorage's election facility during their by-mail election. And then they also heard from officials regarding mailing and business owners regarding printing services. And they also heard information regarding ADA complications with the current precinct process. And ultimately, among others, they made recommendations to move to a by-mail hybrid process and develop an education campaign to inform voters. Those are the 2 of the recommendations that would affect the city of Kenai. The others affect mostly the borough. The others were specific to the borough's election. So the resolution supports me in the exploration of implementation of those recommendations. And as a part of that, I had planned to hold work session or a series of work sessions for council and other members of the public to provide them information on what the city's options are, whether that means what we would need to stay precinct-based or what we would need to do to move with the borough if they were to go to by-mail process, and what that might look like for the city, what types of MOUs might be put into place, or what types of other types of decisions that would need to be made. And let's see. Oh, Councilmember Peterkin did confirm with me before we put this on the agenda. We don't have a need for any appropriating any funds at this time. It's likely that decisions will be made in time to include the funding in the FY21 budget process. Mayor Gabriel also contacted me and said that he would sponsor the resolution as well. That didn't come in time to put it in the packet, but so it is on the resolution that would be signed if it was adopted, that his name would be on it as well. And I just wanted to mention that it had been on the horizon in the budget document for the past 2 years that the state and the borough were considering considering election processes, and so this is it. This will be us exploring that as well now. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councilmember Glendening.
Yeah, just some questions on background, if you please. Reading in the literature, there was a Human Rights Commission that made demands and a settlement was made. Did that involve voter access, equipment issues? How did we get to that place?
City Clerk Jamie Heim.
Thank you. Councilmember Glendenning, it's my understanding that a complaint was brought to both the City of Homer and the Kenai Peninsula Borough regarding accessibility. Currently, our option for folks with disabilities is that they have to ask somebody to come to an absentee location or a precinct and request a special needs ballot, meaning that somebody has to take it back to them, and this person felt disenfranchised that they weren't able to come to a precinct themselves and vote. The state dealt with this several years ago and received funds from the Help America Vote Act and purchased touchscreen units to allow voters with disabilities to vote in their elections, but the way that those particular machines work, there's not enough time to have the machines sent back and forth to be reprogrammed. So the cities and boroughs are unable to use those touchscreen units. It's my understanding that the City of Homer cured that complaint by purchasing a touchscreen unit, and in the borough's settlement, this election stakeholder group process was their settlement.
Some follow-up questions. Is there a timeline to have all this accomplished? You know, the proper devices and all the ADA compliance issues? Or we just have to show good faith that we're working on it?
Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Navarre. At this point, there is no timeline for it. I believe it's my understanding that the borough would like to have it implemented by 2020, but Paul can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe that there was a timeline put from the election stakeholder group.
Any other comments or questions? Councilmember Glendenning.
Yeah, just going through the literature, we talk about you know, purpose and guiding principles, and following the borough assembly, we get down to recommendation number 5, I believe, wherein we were talking about service areas not being allowed to vote for their service member boards again. Are we asked to countenance that with our vote tonight? We had talked about exploring issues, but yet there's an implementation of a borough ordinance that is introduced and is before the borough, I believe, be in the Policies and Procedures Committee this next time. Are we going to vote for something that we don't know about, or maybe our friends in Nikiski have some serious questions? Do we have to approve this tonight, or can we hold? It'd be a little improvident to hold out one whole section of this and then approve it later. But I have some concerns, as my friends in Nikiski do, regarding disenfranchising service board members. There's quite a bit of tax dollars involved in this, and the service areas invite public participation and input from the unincorporated areas. So I'm just saying, what is our part in wrapping this in? Are we just concerned, as you outlined, with things that impact us directly here in the city?
I'll go to Councilman Nackstead for a response to this.
I'm hearing what Mr. Glendenning saying, and having read the resolution and reading through the title in specific, we're not voting for anything tonight. What we're simply doing is we recognize that a stakeholders group has done some work. We recognize it. We're not agreeing to anything. What we are doing is asking Jamie, our clerk, who is part of the stakeholders group, to continue working and to report back to us. And we need to have her there, I think, as our ears and eyes, and to do that. And it could be she reports something back and we don't like it, and like what you're talking about, but we're not agreeing to anything. I don't know what you're reading from there exactly, but that's not what this resolution does. It simply recognizes the recommendations of the borough, which is not agreeing with it, and directing staff to explore implementation. And then, like the clerk said, she would report back to us, we'd have work sessions. So maybe we shouldn't be getting too far into the details.
Councilmember Glendenning.
Yeah, I just noted that on page 38 of our packet, it talks about a draft ordinance attached for consideration. It's a void in my knowledge. And I'm willing to accept that this resolution is amended. It changed the word verbiage from supporting to recognizing the efforts. And I see that Mr. Nackstead or Councilman Maxted has a good point. But my point is, at some point in time, we will have to address the ability of people in unincorporated areas to have a say-so over their service areas and their budgeting. Thank you.
No problem. And I too, when that comes up, I know nothing that we do as this body can circumvent the rules that the Borough Assembly has to abide by in the borough. And they get their powers from the state, and under service areas, you can operate them as elected bodies or as appointed and so on and so forth. But they'd have to, regardless of this, they'd have to introduce an ordinance to change any of these recommendations in here. And so they would have a public hearing, and those people would be able to be heard also. Councilmember Malloy.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Navarre. Yeah, well, I agree with Councilmember Nackstead that what we're doing here is supporting, is adding our own recognition of the recommendations, just that they've been made, and supporting the joint resolution, which basically says that. So we're not taking a position on whether a specific recommendation should be adopted or not tonight. That being said, I do agree with Councilmember Glendenning's concern about recommendation number 5. I would, personally not like to see the Assembly go to appointed service area boards and for service areas, but that's a decision that the Assembly will have to make at the appropriate time, and I don't think as a council, we really need to weigh in on that. Thank you.
Any other comments? If not, was unanimous consent requested?
Request unanimous consent.
Unanimous consent has been requested. Is there any objection? I have an objection, so Madam Clerk, we're ready to vote.
Councilmember Nackstead,
Yes.
Councilmember Petty,
Yes.
Councilmember Glendenning,
No.
Councilmember Malloy,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Navarre,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you. Resolution number 2019-65 is adopted. We're now on to D4, I believe, resolution number 2019-66, approving a one-year extension of facility management services at the City of Kenai Multipurpose Facility, introduced by the administration. I need a motion. Councilmember Nackstead.
I move to adopt Resolution 2019-66.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. At this time, I'll go out to the public. Is there anybody in the public that wishes to comment or testify to the council on resolution number 2019-66? Seeing none, it's back before the body. Any discussion?
I move for approval to
Unanimous.
unanimous consent, sorry.
Unanimous consent has been requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, resolution number 2019-66 is adopted. We're now down to G4, action approval, approving election workers for the October 1st, 2019 regular election. It was introduced by the clerk, and I'd remind you, you have a on the laydown tonight, a revision to that. Councilmember Malloy.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Navarre. Move to approve the election workers for the October 1, 2019 regular election as for the Kenai Precinct number 1, Kenai Precinct number 2, and Kenai Precinct number 3 as listed by the city clerk in her laydown memo dated today.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded,
Requesting unanimous consent.
and unanimous consent has been requested. Is there any, I guess we don't go to the public, but Madam Clerk, if you don't mind, and if you have it in front of you, I'd like you to read the names. I think with their time and energy that they put into an election, I think we should read those that have volunteered this year, and a number of them, if not most, have returned year after year. But I'll let you decide. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Navarre. Former Clerk Carol Frias is our chair for Kenai number 1. She has been working with Virginia Walters for several years, who Carol agreed to let us steal her for Kenai number 3, and Virginia agreed to go ahead and chair Kenai number 3. And then Carol's also working with Linda Swarner, Barbara Norbeck, June Harris, and Eileen Bryson. Marty Pepper agreed today. I received word today at 2:30, so you probably heard a very loud sigh of relief that we received workers for Kenai number 2. So Marty Pepper agreed to chair Kenai number 2, and we've recruited Margaret Ryder, Karen Manell, and Sarah Castamore for Kenai number 2. And just to note that Dan Castamore is not on the ballot that will appear in that precinct, so it's not a problem for her to work there. And then for Kenai number 3, along with Virginia Walters, we have Shyla Phillips, Patricia Riley, and Ruby Kobus.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And with that, the council has moved and seconded, and unanimous consent has been requested. Anybody have any comment or that before I move on? All right. No objection. The election workers are approved, and thank you. We're now down to action number 9. G9, action approval, assignment of shore fishery lease from Michael Markham to Nancy Hillman Scroll for Track 2 Shore Fishery Plat Number 71, introduced by the administration. I need a motion. Councilmember Nackstead.
I move for approval of the assignment of shore fishery lease Track 2 Shore Fishery Plat Number 71.
It's moved and seconded. Thank you, Councilmember Glendenning. I don't believe, is there anybody in the public? Do we normally go on these? I think. Seeing none.
Request unanimous consent.
Unanimous consent has been requested. Any objection? Seeing none. Assignment of shore lease from Michael Markham to Nancy Hillman Stroll, Track 2 is approved. We're now down to G10, action approval assignment of Tideland lease from Snug Harbor Seafoods, Inc. to CRS Can Operate, Inc. for Track B, Kenai Tideland Survey Number 2, according to plat number 89-2, introduced by the administration. I need a motion. Councilmember Nackstead.
I'd move to approve the lease, the 2 lease assignments you just listed.
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Malloy. Any discussion?
Request unanimous consent.
Unanimous consent has been requested. Any objection? Seeing none, assignment of lease for Tideland lease from Snug Harbor Seafood, Inc. to CRS Can Operate, Inc. is approved. We're now down to G11, action approval, assignment of 3 Kenai Municipal Airport Reserve leases from Soars International Ministries, Inc. to Schillings Rentals LLC for Lot 3, Block 1, and Lot 2, Block 3, General Aviation Apron Subdivision Number 1, amended, and Lot 1A, Block 2, General Aviation Subdivision Number 3, introduced by the administration. I need a motion. Councilmember Naxted.
Okay, I'd move to approve the assignment of the lease. Pardon? The three leases, yeah.
Second, and request unanimous consent.
It's been moved and seconded, and unanimous consent has been requested. Is there any objection? Seeing or hearing none, assignment of the three leases from Kenai Municipal Airport Reserve leases from SOAR International Ministries to Schilling Reynolds LLC are approved. At this time, we're down to commission and committee reports. Council on Aging. That would be Council Member Glenn Denning.
On September 12th, the Council on Aging met over at the Senior Center. And on the agenda was a discussion and recommendation for a code of conduct for the Senior Center. It's an internal discussion that they've had in their organization, and they're putting together some recommendations and are consulting with attorney and staff as to how to implement them. This is a work in progress. They're excited about Rasmussen funding for their flooring, and they're applying for a grant, Home Depot, $3,000 for cabinets in the game room, and also for storage, office supplies, and community volunteers. Also, over at the Russian Church, they're going to present a co-event with the Senior Center, and hopefully this will happen at Christmas time, and we look forward to its implementation. And they're also talking about a greenhouse project for next summer. Preliminary budget is $14,000. They have some grant money or legacy money from the Osborne family, and they want to design something for the seniors who view it as a positive outlet for their energies. The next meeting will be October 10th of this year. Thank you.
Thank you. Airport Commission.
Yes, thank you, Vice Mayor. The
Council-
Airport
yep.
Commission met on September the 12th. However, it was dismissed due to lack of quorum, and our next meeting will be on October the 10th. Thank you.
Thank you. Harbor Commission, Councilmember Glenn Denning.
Yeah, the Harbor Commission met in council chambers here on the 16th, and they approved the assignment of the shore leases, Track 2, Shore Fishery Plat number 71, and assignment of the Tidelands Lease Track B, Kenai Tideland Survey number 2, according to Plat 89-2, and we just affirmed that recommendation. Their next meeting is going to be in November the 12th, but they had some subjects that they were looking forward to for a discussion and maybe even a report from city staff. One was there'd been discussion about marketing the dock for use, and I know City Manager Ostrander, when the season is over for fishing, he'll be getting together with people who are interested in it, and I know that there's a couple fisher folks, and I think maybe one oil field that might be interested in availing themselves of our facility. They're also wanting to know about the dock repair and the boat launch, making sure that those are primed, cocked, and ready. there was a Coast Guard report that was going to come with the PU fishery closeout, and as I told them, it's not in our view yet. You're still the city staff is still consolidating these ideas and conclusions, and they will all of us will be briefed in due course. The bluff erosion, they're concerned about that. I reported city manager's last observation on that, and they're just anxious for maybe that's the wrong word. They're eager to learn about any progress in that venue. And then I told them also that the code review regarding commission focus is forthcoming, and our city attorney Scott Bloom has that pretty well in hand. It will be bolted on to the greater concern of our marketing of our lands and the sale of our lands, and how the Kenai Harbor part of it will be how it interacts with the Planning Commission and city staff. And with that, it ends my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Parks and Recs Commission, Councilmember Naxted.
Thank you. Parks and Rec met on September 5th. They had a discussion item regarding September and October events. The October event is on October 12th. That's the Kenai's 4th Annual Pumpkin Festival. That's been very successful in the past. It'll be held noon to 3 o'clock at Millennium Square. They've gotten like 100 pumpkins, and they've gone in 5 minutes, and so they got 150 last year, something like that. And so there was another half a minute or something like that. But they're going to have a lot of little pumpkins again this year. IGA is, I don't think they're completely donating them, but at a reduced price. And I believe what they'll do is they will charge $3 this time, just to slow that down a little bit. And the other part of the festival is the hay maze that they're going to have there. So they obviously need hay bales and whatnot. And they asked Kenai Feed if they might be able to help, and they said, well, sure. Well, but we need all these hay bales, and yeah, okay, we'll load them up, and they'll even bring them, unload them, put them where they need to be, and pick them back up again. Like it was no big deal. It's kind of a big deal.
Yeah,
But
it is.
anyway, I wanted to bring that up. Bob Freitas was very pleased and astounded by their generosity. And the flyer I do have has a number of other people that are involved in donating. The Lions Club, Three Bears, City of Kenai Walmart, and whatnot. The other thing that's happening, and this is a little bit earlier on, and for a little longer period of time, they're calling for entries for a poetry contest. Theme is man's best friend, and what this is receiving a number of poems. The Friends of the Library will pick the top 10 poems they like. They'll be placed along a trail, so you can, when you walk through the trail, you'll come across a poem and you'll be able to read it. Or what you can do is they'll have an app, with one of those app things. You run your phone over it, and it'll actually, with the author's voice, recite the poem back to you. So I think that's kind of a cool thing that our parks are doing. Let's see, I don't have a date on that, but they do have a deadline for submissions of September 30th, and a notification Saturday, October 12th at the Kenai Pumpkin Festival that they're going to be doing there. So that ends the report, other than the next meeting will be October 3rd here in council chambers.
Thank you. Planning and Zoning Commission, Councilmember Malloy.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Navarre. Planning and Zoning Commission met on September 11th. They had on their agenda consideration of a plat, and this is a preliminary plat on Bridge Road subdivision on behalf of Peninsula Mini Storage. So this is property along Bridge Access Road, and they voted to approve the preliminary plat. And what the preliminary plat would do is vacate property lines between several properties and change a utility easement, and these modifications by the plat would allow for orderly development of this property along and so that was the basis for it. They also had on their agenda a resolution to approve the transfer of a conditional use permit for professional office space from Clifford and Kristen Smith to VIP Monitoring Services, and they approved that. And that's a property that's on Beaver Loop Road, and the basis for it was VIP Monitoring Services are purchasing the property and the business from the individuals, so as to facilitate that business transfer. Planning and Zoning Commission meets next Wednesday, September 25th at 7 p.m. here. Thank you.
Thank you. Beautification is my committee, although they did meet on September 10th. Unfortunately, I had a last-minute cancellation. I did get a copy of the agenda, and one thing I can tell you that they addressed, and they promised themselves they would, and Chairperson Lisa Gabriel, at the Veterans Memorial during Memorial Day next year, is having red poppies around there as part of the plan. And so they didn't forget. It was on the agenda, and I'm sure they have a plan now for going forward on Memorial Day of 2020. And so that's good that they hadn't forgot that, and their next meeting will be October 8th. And there was no mini grant steering committee, so we're on reports of the mayor. As you know, the mayor just left last night, so for my report, I did get up at 6 o'clock this morning. I took a shower and went to work. No. Yeah, and I went to the chamber, had another meeting, and then I got ready for this meeting. But no, in all seriousness, Mayor Gabriel, when he returns, will give a good report, I'm sure. And in his stead, there is a group meeting here on the 24th and 25th with the mental health lands and that, and I'll be doing an introduction at that meeting on the morning, I think, of the 24th, if I'm not mistaken, 24th or 25th. I could look at my calendar. But anyway, we'll go from there. City Manager's report. Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Navarre. So last week, actually on the 5th of September, I had an opportunity to speak to the Unical Retirees Group over at the Senior Center. It's the second time I've gotten an opportunity to talk to that group, and as I'm sure you know, they're very engaged. They do a lot of stuff for the Senior Center, a lot of civic projects around the city, and they're also just very engaged, and I get a lot of really good questions when I speak to them, so that's always a good opportunity and one that I appreciate. Also, since the last council meeting, both Stephanie Queen and I have been working on a Board of Fish strategy now that the Board of Fish is going to reconsider their decision on where to hold the 2020 UCI meeting. So I'm putting together a fact sheet and primarily dealing with the comparison of all the other FinFish meetings in the state. It's been interesting in talking to the board support at the state and then looking at the history of the other FinFish meetings in the state. If you Yukon Kuskokwim or Bristol Bay or any of the other FinFish meetings, there's a rotational schedule. You always see that. They don't always stay in Anchorage. They do hit Anchorage occasionally, but in the case of all these other ones, they do actually rotate, which I think is a solid justification for why they should do the same thing with our UCI meeting. We're also looking at the adequacy of the venue here and lodging, making sure that everything is still reserved for 2020, and we're looking at the cost savings of holding it here in Kenai and Soldotna. Stephanie's actually working on a letter that's going to go with the fact sheet. I'll bring both of those to council prior to the deadline for comments, which is October 8th. Along with this, we're going to have conversations with each individual board member. Our focus is really, work to retain the 2020 meeting here, but certainly push hard to maintain that rotating policy. So even if we lose the battle this year to get 2020 meeting here, encourage them very strongly because of the precedent they set in other parts of the state to maintain that rotating policy that they have for the UCI going forward. Doctor's Cabin, Dr. Hansen's project that he's been pursuing for almost a year now. I met with him, and actually Councilmember Glenn Denning was there. Joe and June Harris, Mike Wesson, and Scott Curtin from our office met and looked to see if we could locate the Doctor's Cabin in the same location as the other presentations are, the other, the donkey winch and the sign and some of those other things on the side of the visitor center. We determined, particularly because this cabin has now grown from what it was originally anticipated it would be, it does not work over in that location. But a suggestion was made at the meeting that we should look at the front of the building instead. And I think everyone was at that meeting agreed that there's a really good location on the front side of the visitor center, sort of behind where the visitor center in front of the back parking lot is a really good location. We verified that there's no conflicts with any utilities or easements in that area, so we'll be pursuing the location of the Doctor's Cabin in the front. He's going to provide a walkway that goes from the front of the building to there. I think it's going to be a really nice addition to the visitor center. I think it'll be attractive for folks going by. They're going to want to stop and check it out. So Dr. Hansen is now working with his engineer to get the additional documentation he needs for that, and hopefully he's hopeful still to get his sonotubes in still this year. Kenai Silver Salmon Derby, as you know, the first week of the Silver Salmon Derby was last weekend. We had good participation. Last weekend we had 61 participants. The fishing was really, really, really tough. We had 3 fish weighed in on Friday, 5 on Saturday, and only 8 on Sunday. So total fish weighed in for the weekend was very, very low. But I'm hopeful that this next weekend is going to be much better. I went out and caught a fish last night, so if I can catch a fish, I'm sure others can. So this next weekend, again, hopefully the fishing's good, and I wouldn't be surprised if you see the winner of the overall tournament come from this weekend. And the overall purse for the winners is going to be around $1,200, so it's certainly worth getting out there and wetting the line to see if you can't find that fish. I signed a short form contract with Divining Point, who's our marketing firm that you approved several meetings ago. This is the short form contract, which is an effort to figure out what people love about Kenai. And it's just from that, establishing a brand and then creating a marketing and communications plan to implement. So this is something where they're actually going to be coming up here, engaging with administration and the public. So they're coming up, flying up here. They're going to spend about a week here. And this is going to be a significant effort on their part. But we signed the short form contract for $12,150. So it still leaves a significant amount of the budgeted amount of $35,000 left for other marketing efforts. But this is really the first step to come up with our marketing and communications plan. Where should we be spending our money? What should we be focused on as a community as far as marketing the community? And then last is Bluff Erosion Project. The request we've been waiting for, which basically is the one that our Alaska division puts together to send to headquarters that says, hey, we need to do this project. We need to allow the city to spend the $1 million that they've committed to pursue the design phase. You need to let that move forward and recognize that if construction is completed, then the money that the city is contributing at this point will go towards our required match of 35%. So that was signed by the Alaska commander last week. They're sending it to division. Division has it for a couple weeks. Then it will be moving on to headquarters. Big step forward there. Also, Murkowski's office, Garrett Boyle, Murkowski's office, was able to get language added to an appropriations bill that provides additional funding for the Corps during this next year, which is actually above and beyond what Congress has asked them to do. So depending on the prioritization of those funds, there's a possibility that we could be receiving some funds for the design phase through this appropriations bill as well. And then actually the last thing I have, I will be flying to Doha, Qatar next Wednesday to watch Ali race in the World Championships over there. So I will be leaving Wednesday, and I'll be back in the office the 2nd, which is the next council meeting. I'll be back in the office, or flying into Kenai like 4 p.m. on the 2nd. So I'll be fresh and ready to go at the next council meeting after flying back from Doha. But we're both excited to go watch Ali run over there. It should be fun. And with that, that's the end of my report, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Are you taking Ali's private jet? No. So, any questions for the city manager? Councilmember Naxted.
I was just curious about the doctor's cabin moving to the other side over there. I don't have a clear vision of it, but, I mean, will it be distracting in any way of the existing, our visitor center? It almost sounds, in my mind, like it's just gonna be out of place sitting out there.
Yeah, thank you.
City Manager Ostrander.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Navarre. Councilmember Nackstead. It was certainly a concern of mine too, and actually Councilmember Glendening is here and he could speak to his perspective as well. But certainly from the folks that were there, and when I looked at it, there's almost a natural location there that it won't distract from the visitor center. And it's hard to explain, but if you're driving on the highway, say towards Nikiski, and you look at the visitor center, you've got the front parking lot, and then you've got the visitor center. This would be in the back side there, so it doesn't obstruct the view at all of the visitor center from that direction. From the other direction, you have the old coffee shop that actually obstructs the view of the visitor center from that direction, and it would really be behind that. So I think in reality, it'll be a nice addition to the facility there, and Councilmember Glendening may want to chime in there as well.
Yeah, just to, as a member of the Board of Directors of the Historical Society, my presence was asked to be there. So the location that was discussed for this cabin, if you recall the layout of the visitor center as you're approaching from the excuse me from the bridge access side, and you get to the turnoff by Paradisos, there's a copse of trees. There's a stand of trees there, okay, that actually frames our visitor center, okay. Where this cabin is going to be located will actually be tucked in behind, okay. So your initial view of the landscape will be the visitor center. Then you discover the cabin. So it's not going to be out on the curb. It's not going to be looking like a shed added on to the visitor center. It will be a very nice addition. It's a building that will lend itself to the theme and theory of the area. Now, as you're coming from Nikiski, as City Manager Ostrander pointed out, there's also not a direct view into the area that we're talking about putting the cabin in. There's there's a coffee shop that's not being used, and some other buildings. So you're not looking at this cabin as you come down, say from Salvation Army. It's something that you discover and say, "Oh my goodness, this is neat." And the cabin is really well presented, really well laid out, and I think it will be a good addition. And I commend City Manager Ostrander for coming up with this good idea.
Any other questions for the city manager? Seeing none, we're on to city attorney, which we have no report. Next, we're on to city clerk. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Navarre. Election is Tuesday, October 1st. Absentee voting began on Monday, September 16th, and we have seen it's been slow for the absentee voters. Hopefully that changes, or people just come out on October 1st. I provided all of you information on the upcoming AML meetings in Anchorage, and you feel free to contact me if you want to go. There's money in the budget for all of you to go. And just wanted to let you know that I've worked with Henry, and we have found a different app for your iPads that works a lot better than iAnnotate. And so if you are interested, we can have a work session, and I can do a little training for you if you'd like, or whatever, but we have a better app.
Councilmember Malloy.
Yeah, I would be definitely interested in that. iAnnotate is not working well for me. So if there's and Henry, Councilmember Nackstead, showed me briefly the new application that he had, and it seems be a lot easier to navigate between agenda items with that. So I would encourage that to happen.
if
We
I
might
could-
even get Councilmember Glenn Denning to
Yeah,
start
I'm-
using his tablet
Well,
as
I'm
well as
willing-
me.
I'm willing,
Not
I'm
holding my
willing to
breath.
listen. So far, I run everything off a little screen on my iPhone 5 and piles of dead trees. But that works for me. But if someone else wants to embrace the new technology, I will not stand in their way.
Any other comments or questions for the clerk? Seeing none, we're down to the item on the agenda where additional public comments. Is there anybody in the public that wishes to comment to the council at this time? I see Mr. Peters in the office or in the audience, even though now you're going to come up. Okay, I knew I might be able to get somebody from the public.
I'm Bob Peterson. I live in Old Town Kenai, and there are ways that it's probably much more appropriate than to come to the council with these lame questions that I have. And I realize that. I wasn't going to say anything. You bullied me into coming up here. So my first thing is I'd like to the mayor, wherever he might be, address him and Councilwoman Petty and Councilman Glenn Denning. I'd like to congratulate them, wish them well on their up-and-coming election, thank them for running a clean campaign with no mudslinging and not filling my mailbox with a bunch of stuff. So anyway, thank you. And there's probably a reason for that, but who knows? Moving on, how about, and I know that I could go to the city manager or the attorney or the chief of police or something and ask them, it seems the way in the back of my head that you can't camp on the beach with the exception of 3 weeks in July during the dip net season, and if you have a note from the city manager, then you can. And I was just wondering, all these tents and stuff that are on our beach, do they have a note from the city manager? And how long are they going to be there? Ask the chief.
Sure, if you finish your comment, I think the city manager might have a comment for you.
Well, I know, and the only reason I'm saying this is because the chief isn't here. And so, to keep order, and that's, to watch me. But anyway, let's see, I had another question about how about there was some activity on the beach. There's a tent down there now. This is at the end of Spruce Street, right where the set netters go on the beach to go to their sites. What happened down there that was all wrapped with, stay back crime scene yellow tape? What was that all about? Now you're going to tell me this isn't the forum for these questions, and you're right, but you asked.
Well, Mr. Peters, since it's you, normally we don't go back and forth with questions, but I believe the city manager does have able to answer one of those two questions and maybe able to answer both. If not, we always take notes here, and one of us or the city manager normally gets back to somebody from the public. But go ahead, City Manager Ostrander.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Navarre.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Navarre. I actually don't have a lot of information for you. I wasn't aware that there was a significant number of tents. I'd seen a couple of tents down there several weeks ago, but I hadn't been down to the beach to take a look lately. But none of them have gotten any sort of permission from administration to be down there. So I'll follow up on that. And as far as the second one, I believe that's still an ongoing investigation, so I won't speak to that.
Okay, thank you, and I appreciate that. And I hate to be a pain in the neck about this kind of stuff, but we have rules for some reason, and I just wonder, I always feel guilty if I should happen to talk to the police and say, oh gee, they're stabbing people on the beach or something, then, I feel like I'm the bad guy. But also I've heard, I have neighbors, and they, we live close to the beach, and they like to walk on the beach, and there's a certain amount of tension based on the beach, you know, there's a lot of weird stuff going on down there, as I observe all over the city. But anyway, I appreciate it, and I appreciate the city manager, Mr. Ostrander, for you're continuing to bang on those guys at the Corps of Engineers. I only hope that, it sounds very hopeful. That was actually, other than to congratulate and encourage our candidates, that's the reason I came this evening, was to hear the announcement. I understood that this was going out to bid soon. And that sounds, if it goes out to bid soon, that sounds to me like they might actually do something, you know? So, and I'm hopeful. I don't know if I'll live long enough to see it. But, well, I don't. I don't know if you'll live long enough to see it. All the guys I know that grew up around where I'm living now, they're not here to see it. But anyway, I appreciate you giving me your time and putting up with me, and, you know, I like to come in and see what's going on with the city. It's a very good way for me to keep informed with what's going on, and we'll even call it my city, you know, so. And as long as you're so tolerant of me, how about this, extension of the management contract for the rec center? Is that the Boys and Girls Club we're talking about? That you just voted?
That is. What? That was the ice rink
Oh, okay. Thank you.
on that
I thought it said rec
on that
center.
particular one, but yes, we do have an ongoing. And Councilman Malloy, did you have a question or a comment?
No, I was just going to say
Okay.
that it was the,
I have one comment and one question for you. One comment I just want to make is ahead of time. I know you've done it for a long time, and as long as I've been on the council, I want to thank you for always sending a Christmas card to council members. Oh, you only send it to me?
If possible.
No. And my question for you is, are you running a silent campaign, write-in campaign for council this year?
No. You know.
But no, thank you very much, Bob, for your participation and your comments tonight. Thank you. Is there anybody else in the public that wishes to comment to the council? Seeing none, we're down to council comments. Councilmember Petty.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Navarre. I appreciate Mr. Peterson congratulating my colleagues and I for having the privilege to run again, and in honor of my fellow city members and individuals that I share the city with. You will notice that I do not have any signs out, sir, and that's to honor the complaints that have been yielded in the past about seeing the campaign signs and what an eyesore they are. So I am in honor of that, not putting out any campaign signs this year. But I do encourage everyone to get out and vote, and express their freedom of choice, and do their patriotic duty to vote on October the 1st. Also, as a reminder, on September the 28th, the Fine Arts Center will be having their Harvest Art Auction, and it's always such a wonderful event, and I would encourage everyone who is here to make and put it on their calendar to attend this splendid event. So thank you for this evening's work that we did, and that ends my comments.
Thank you. Councilmember Glenn Denning.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Navarre. I took the opposite tack of Councilor Petty. Being from Chicago, I'm just a little paranoid, so I did put my signs out, but just only 20 of them tactfully and strategically placed. I did that just to show my respect to the voters. Say, I'm on the ballot, my name's out there, you'll see my name around, and thank you for noticing. I'll just refine my comments or confine my comments a little bit regarding this the stakeholders group issues that we talked about. I see that the concerns are needful and prescient and timely for the concerns that we have here. There's several several issues as I see it. One is basically our technology is outdated, and we have the ADA issues, and how do we increase in voter turnout? Also, this is a complex issue with lots of moving parts, and we're going to even have to get into Title 29 at the state level to have fruition of this movement. But also, what I would like to point out is part of the guiding principles, and getting back to my friends in Nikiski, if I'll just cut right to the chase, talks about promoting participation in the electoral process for all borough voters. The way voters in unincorporated areas participate in the electoral process is by voting for and observing and interacting with their service area representatives. In Nikiski, they have far more elected officials than we do. They have at least 3 service boards out there. So I would ask anybody that's interested in this issue that we really look at it in a sincere manner, and try and provide a way that people can exercise their civic duty, gain training for even maybe your future school board or assembly seats, and broaden the base of political opportunities for our fellow citizens. And with that ends my comments.
Thank you. Councilman Malloy.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Navarre. And I'd like to, congratulate my 2 colleagues, my 3 colleagues actually, that are on the ballot, and wish them well in their, contest with write-ins, since they have no bodies. And I do appreciate that they're willing to continue their valuable service to the city of Kenai. I want to say that I do agree with Councilmember Glendening on the issue of elected service area boards. I think that does have value, and I'd hate to see more and more authority being consolidated in the administration of the borough as opposed to the borough assembly. And so, again, that's, but what we were doing tonight was just recognizing the recommendations. And the other thing that I do have a concern about is whether, it's going to be presented that we totally go to electronic voting or voting by mail. I'd really hate to see that happen. Personally, I've always enjoyed going to the precinct on election day and voting on election day when I'm in town, rather than voting early or anything, because I really like that part of the election process, and I like chatting with and thanking the precinct workers that are there, and seeing members of the public come in and out while I'm there voting and everything. And I'd hate to see that part of the process go away. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Nackstead.
Thank you. Just to kind of follow up on Mr. Glendening's comments and Mr. Malloy's regarding the elections thing, I think it's important that we have a voice, and actually what Mr. Glendening voted against was for us to have a voice in it, in which case we would be pretty much isolated, and then the group would continue without us, and we'd make our own decisions or let the borough decide. But at any rate, I appreciate that the vote did go the way it went. Moving on, if anybody wants to go down Beaver Loop, maybe to go catch some silver salmon down at the park down there on the river, you don't want to go Bridge Access Road, because that's going to be closed for like another 9 days or so. The first mile of Beaver Loop is closed while they're replacing a Nadroma Stream culvert and 2 other culverts, and then a major dig out, so the whole area is shut down. But you can still get there, you just have to go over by Beaver Creek and the other end and then drive back. It's only 3 miles, but it's, don't take the shortcut. I don't take the shortcut coming here for the next 10 days, so anyway, that's going on. By the way, they're doing a great job down there and everything. I'm not complaining. It's just, matter of fact, I'm glad it's all happening at the same time. Today I went to the chamber and listened to the assembly hopefuls that were there. Not all of them were there, actually, and it's always good to hear their responses to the comments that, or the questions that are posed to them. And none of them I'm voting for, I think. But so anyway, it was good to hear their points. The last thing. Actually, there's 2 things. Last thing, main thing is a constituent asked me about bags, plastic bags. He said, "Gee, you know, is Kenai planning on getting rid of plastic bags, or is it just not come up?" And I said, "Well, it really hasn't come up as far as I know, but I've asked around, and I've since asked around a little more, and and I said, well, what I do know is a lot of our other constituents in town kind of like them." They take them home and they reuse them and all of that, and certainly I do. And, maybe it's a global problem, but maybe not a problem in Kenai and not too much of an issue here, I think. And asking around at at the stores when I'm checking out, it's like, well, gee, I'm really glad we have these bags here for customers that forget their tote bags that they would bring otherwise and whatnot. And so anyway, I thought it was kind of appropriate just to bring it up, even though I'm not planning on moving anything forward. I'm just stating it. I don't know if Kenai is the holdout or whatever. It almost sounds like it, but maybe that's an okay thing. So now if I talk to that constituent again, we've discussed it, or I have at least. So there you go. I'll kind of leave it at that. The last thing I'd like to announce, since I get the last word, is tomorrow's a special day. Tomorrow is National Talk Like a Pirate Day. So just in case you forget that, it's only once a year, and it's tomorrow. Arr.
No, thank you, Councilmember Naxted, and I'm going to have the last word.
I guess you are.
Because I sort of gave the mayor's report, but I'm now going to give my council report. So I'll go to Councilman Navarre at this time. No, first I should have said this under the mayor's report, but not only Mayor Gabriel, myself, and I know City Manager Ostrander, I apologize if I didn't see some of the others, attended Mayor Nils Anderson's memorial service in Soldotna. And it was a good turnout, and the mayor read a proclamation in honor of Mayor Anderson. And so I want to just, again, give our condolences to his family and thank the community for coming out and honoring his memory and his service to our communities here on the Kenai. And Brad Heber is here too. I'll comment on Councilmember Glendenning's service area. I know from the past, a lot of people have just never filed and filled the seats, and so they have to be filled by the assembly or the mayor, and so they're coming up. Maybe one avenue would be is, if they introduce this, is give a 2-year period, and if a service area fills all their seats or has somebody run for all their seats in a 2-year, in any 1-year period, they wouldn't be gone to appointed, but otherwise those service areas would go to appointed seats. And maybe that's a way to make people aware that if they don't act, then they lose their ability and let it go to an appointed board. So there's, I think, a lot of comments that will come out of this. But I have no doubt that there'll be a public hearing and there'll be public process, and so that's why I didn't have any problem voting for tonight's action, because it's actually a positive. As Councilman Malloy stated, there's different ways going forward on how to get more people out to vote. And sometimes when you do that, you take away some opportunity to people that used to do it the old way. Sort of like Mr. Glendenning, or Councilmember Glendenning, he updated his technology by buying a new pen and a pair of glasses the other day. Other people do a computer, but no. And I too, like Councilman Nackstead, on the paper bags, plastic bags, I'm one of those that believe if you continue to educate people, you know, they'll make the right choice. If government has to force it down your throat, I don't think that's a good way to do it. And that's why I'm proud that Kenai's not telling businesses that they have to do something, but those businesses that want to, and as things change and as education happens, businesses will do, and it won't affect their bottom line that way because they slowly implement the different program. And we heard a lot of different horror stories where people had to throw away their bags and different things like that. But so I hope you know, people do continue to look at our environment and issues that do affect us, and request of businesses in the city of Kenai to act at. And when it starts affecting their bottom line or issues, then they'll slowly make changes, and that's how it should happen. But government shouldn't force it down people's throat. So with that, I think that concludes my comments for tonight. And with no other business to come before this council, we are adjourned.